What's going on, everyone? I'm the Intel, and today I want to rank my 5 favorite games of 2021. Not on a tier list, which is kind of surprising for this channel, to be honest. But in all seriousness, I thought this would be a good video to kind of, celebrate the great games we've had this year and just kind of share my opinion. Because, a lot of people say this year wasn't too good for gaming, but it wasn't the best. But I still think there's some really good games that deserve, they deserve to be known and recognized. Before we start looking towards next year, I think it's time to look back at the last year of gaming, kicking it off with number 5 on the list. This is honestly kind of a weird pick for me. Obviously, I've never done something like this on the channel, like ranking my favorite games of the year, as I've just not been on YouTube that long. But I'm not really a roguelike person or a fan of like super difficult games, kind of like Sekiro, Dark Souls, etc. But Returnal is honestly one of the reasons I bought my PlayStation 5. It looked so good, and I was willing to take the pain and suffering to make it through this game. And I'm glad I did. Returnal is great. Its gameplay is fast, addicting, but ultra difficult with a very steep learning curve, literally from the get-go. Honestly, one of the hardest regions of Returnal is the first, because you have to take the time to learn the environment and how the gameplay works, and then how can you beat a boss. It's things like these that actually make me love it, because it throws you right in at the deep end, and you just kind of have to figure everything out, and once you figure everything out, the next biome is much easier, because you kind of know how the game works. Of course though, we have to talk about the visuals. Wow, Returnal looks phenomenal. Honestly, this is easily my favorite PS5 exclusive so far, and I really can't wait to see what House Marquee are up to next. But my negatives do come down to a lack of saving at launch. Like, come on man, I just want to go through some biomes, get super leveled up, and then leave for the day and come back and take on the boss. But at least Returnal does have saving now. Accessibility is another issue I had with Returnal. Personally, I really had no issue with the difficulty. I was able to get through it just fine, but the game just kind of had little to no accessibility options. I would have liked to see what Hades had. If you don't know, Hades had an option called God Mode, which just made you invincible. So players who are unable to play a game where you need such a high reaction time due to any kind of issues, or you just kind of just want to play the game and just see the story and experience the game, it just would have been a nice addition. My final negative for Returnal would be the story was a little light in my opinion. I felt like the story could have done more, but obviously this might be just due to being a smaller developer, as the developers, House Marquee, are now actually have been acquired by Sony, so now that they're under PlayStation Studios, they likely have a lot more resources and budget at their disposal. I'm really confident in their next game that will have a much bigger and better story, which I hope's Returnal 2, but I'm honestly excited to see whatever these guys put out, because Returnal was great. I really like this game, and I still do. Forza Horizon 5 is an unbelievable and truly next-gen graphical showcase, but still, it manages to look incredible on an Xbox One. Now, I'm looking at that from gameplay footage I've seen on YouTube. I have gotten rid of my Xbox One as I have a next-gen console, just so it might actually not look that good, but on YouTube it looks good. But Mexico is stunning, with gorgeous landscapes and sights to see, with varied biomes and areas that are a joy to drive through and take photos of. The cars feel as great as they did in Horizon 4, with a pretty decent selection of cars in my own opinion. The audio in Horizon 5 was handled really good. The cars rumbled like how I would expect them to. Driving across mud and water sounded and looked great, but also on the audio side is a negative. Horizon 5 soundtrack just didn't click with me at all. All the other games did, but honestly Horizon 5 soundtrack was just kind of a downgrade from Horizon 4, as the soundtracks really do make up these games for me. I also found the story elements of the game to be a bit of a drag. It was usually the weakest sections of the game because it was forcing some Horizon Festival story on me. Finally, this game would actually be higher on this list, but I have to mention that the game has had constant connectivity issues since day zero. Even before launch with the deluxe edition stuff, connectivity was bad and it's not gotten better. They're starting to improve it and they are working on it, but I think it's something I have to factor in, that getting into a convoy was almost impossible for about a month. And that's something I have to factor in with its placement here at number 4. I'm a massive stealth game fan and a massive Hitman fan. and I believe the World of Assassination trilogy, comprised of Hitman 2016, Hitman 2, and Hitman 3, is the best stealth game trilogy in the world. No Splinter Cell or Assassin's Creeds come close in my opinion. Hitman 3 also allows you to play every single map from Hitman 2016 and Hitman 2 in one package with all the included graphical upgrades of Hitman 3, with the impressive and ray tracing like, not exactly ray tracing, but very similar reflections and incredible lighting effects. Did I mention it was 100% free if you own the original games? Hitman 3's gameplay is the best it has been in the entire trilogy. It builds upon the phenomenal foundation of Hitman 2, but it doesn't actually add very much, as there's not really much to add. In all honesty, it's missing maybe dual wielding, but that's about it in my opinion. The new locations are kinda mixed in my opinion. Chongqing, the map set in China, is one of my all-time favorites for the series. I really love this map. Dubai is also great and is easily the best looking of the trilogy. Mendoza is fine, but just not great, and Dartmoor is also the same. It's just fine, not great in my opinion. And Romania, the train level, well, was a bit of a disappointment to be honest. They could have done a little more of it in my opinion, but that's just really my only negatives. The locations were great with some standouts, but a lot of just okay maps being Mendoza, Dartmoor, and Romania. But the game, I also have to factor in the negative, it just didn't really change much. In all honesty, it didn't add very much to the gameplay. You could even see Hitman 3 as a level pack, because gameplay-wise, Hitman 2 and 3 are almost identical. But other than that, Hitman 3 was so good, I have not many negatives with this game. My only problem again is, it just feels gameplay-wise they didn't really do too much with it. I feel like they could have done more, but you do have to remember, this was IO Interactive's very first ever self-published game. They had no publisher, it was just them, they developed and published, so I can understand the budget was probably a little tight, but this was a really, really good game, and I really recommend it. If you've never played any of the Hitman games, buy Hitman 3 and the Access Passes, and play for the entire trilogy. You will have an absolute blast. This game, wow. Resident Evil Village blew me away in every single way. Now, I have only played Resident Evil 7 before this, so I'm a relatively new Resident Evil fan, but I do plan to play the remakes next year at some time. But I wasn't the biggest on Resident Evil 7 actually. I kind of found the ship section dragged the game down, and other sections I just wasn't also the biggest on. I also found the tapes were just a bit annoying, and I didn't really like that gameplay feature. But Village, in my 10-hour playthrough, I loved almost every single moment, and only about 2 sections dragged the game away from number 1. The gameplay was great, and an amazing but natural evolution of the gameplay introduced in 7, but it kind of felt more weighty and with more impact and a little bit more fun compared to 7. Graphically, I was playing on a PlayStation 5 in ray tracing mode. I was blown away. The ray tracing, I didn't really notice it very much. The lighting, the textures on the ground, like the snow, it honestly looked photorealistic at times, and it really shows how powerful Capcom's Resident Evil engine is. The story was also a highlight. I loved the cast of villains way more than I did in 7. I felt like most of the villains were great, other than one of them, the swamp man person. I wasn't too big on that section and that villain, to be honest, but the main characters like Ethan, Mia, and Chris really were well written, and though I don't know much about Chris, as again I've only played 7, and now 8, I actually felt it actually helped the story, especially the opening sections, because I obviously didn't know who Chris Redfield was very much other than that ending at 7, and I really felt my emotions towards Chris at the very start of the game wouldn't have been so negative if I've played the other games. I think just not playing the other games means I don't really know who this character is, and his actions at the start of the game really made me have much more negative emotions towards him until big reveals later on in the game. I think my only negatives really are that swamp monster guy and the factory. Those were easily my least favorite sections. It was kind of like the boat area from Resident Evil 7. It was just kind of a slog and I didn't really like it, and it just kind of felt like it went on and on and on and never ended. Other than that though, I really liked this game. But there's only one other game on this list that stole my heart this year. I love this game so much. An unbelievable amount of love I have for Halo Infinite. They goddamn did it. 343 created the best combination of past Bungie Halo and modern 343 Halo, and tied it together in the most well-made FPS of the year, and maybe one of the best FPSs of the last couple years. Halo Infinite's gameplay is easily the best of the series. The grappling hook was fast, easy to use, and made movement a joy. Guns felt really good, and I didn't really know how to use them to the best of their abilities, and it took a bit of learning on how to use weapons like the Cinder Shot. You might not know this, but the gun actually has a, like when you fire it and it explodes, the gun actually has a mini black hole effect where it'll drag enemies into it once it explodes. It's really cool. Visuals wise, I will say it's a massive step up from the 2020 demo, but if we compare it to other games on this list like Village, it definitely falls behind in raw fidelity. But for Halo as a series, it really makes sense. A super realistic graphical Halo, I just don't think would have worked at all for Halo Infinite, to be honest. Story-wise, I loved Infinite's campaign. It really worked for me, and I can't wait to see where we go next. The Weapon was one of my favourite characters. Within a couple of hours, I loved her dialogue and almost everything she did. It was amazing. Chief felt like his Halo 4-5 self, but with that colder side we saw in the earlier games, making a perfect blend of 343's Chief and Bungie's Chief. Escharum as well. Wow, he was easily one of my favourite Halo villains ever. He was so well written in this game. And of course, the pilot. I really started to like the pilot about halfway in. After that AA gun mission, I kind of got a lot of his motives and reasons why he did things. All of it was great. The campaign is so good. But the multiplayer, I have issues with, well, foundational wise, the multiplayer is really good, but the progression at launch wasn't very good at all, and it's starting to get better, but it really was bad. A challenge-based leveling system, well, it wasn't great either, and we're still not seeing any improvements on that front, but hopefully in a couple months that should hopefully change. And also an overpriced shop for the game with about $20, £15 a bundle isn't a good look either for the game. But my only negatives with Halo Infinite lie with the multiplayer. And if we're looking at campaign plus multiplayer, with a phenomenal campaign and a multiplayer that's good but just has progression related issues and shop related issues, in my opinion, and please remember this is only my opinion, Halo Infinite is my game of the year.